What up, Bulls Nation? We've got a live CHGO Bulls coming up right around the corner. On today's show, the latest updates and a couple of guesses in the Josh Giddey contract saga, which continues on. Day what? Hour what? I don't know, but we'll talk about it. Plus, some interesting analytics on Josh Giddey's, not just first season with the Bulls, but last season with OKC, a trend that is very mirrored as far as how he started his seasons and how he finished them. Plus, Steve Kerr had some interesting thoughts about youth development in today's NBA. How does it apply to the Bulls? We'll talk about all of that with a special guest coming up next. What's going on, Bulls Nation? Welcome into the CHGO Bulls podcast. Coming to you live from our studios here in West Loop, downtown Chicago. I'm Peck, Bulls_Peck. That's Will the Go Gottlieb. Bow, bow. Perfectly coiffed, Will_Gottlieb. Queen of the controls, the one and only Katie Duffy. What up, Katie?
Hi.
Happy Wednesday, everybody in Bulls Nation. Thanks for joining us. Hit that like button if you're hanging out with us in that YouTube chat. Make sure you're also subscribed to the CHGO Sports YouTube channel. Another dog days week, and we are smack dab in the middle of it. We got a little Josh Giddey stuff to talk about today. We're going to talk about some of the youth pieces on this roster. Goat, are you as excited as I am to talk about these things with a special guest / friend of ours?
I'm only excited because we are doing it with a special guest / friend of ours, a guy who you know and hate.
You know him. You either love him or love to hate him, just like me. It's our old pal Mark K, who joins us now. Mark, buddy. Oh, we miss you dearly. How are you, my friend?
You guys must be so desperate for content that you're having me on this podcast.
Correct.
That's how I'm going.
Two things can be true, Mark. That and the fact that we miss you. Oh, how is your life now that you're not, in addition to being a CHGO Bulls contributor on the regular basis, but also maybe hopefully just taking a little bit of an emotional and mental health break from this team? Or have you not?
I have a little bit, but probably not as much as I would have liked to. As we were discussing pre-show, I still watched more Bulls games last season than I planned to. Still listen to you guys every single day. Whenever Frederick and Doug post a show, I listen to that too. So I still remain somewhat connected to it, not to the same degree that I used to. I'm not on Basketball Reference every day like I used to. I'm not tracking my salary cap sheet like Will is like I used to. So there's some things that I've disconnected on, but more broadly, still following from afar. But yeah, hopefully that changes one day.
I just wanted to make sure that you weren't going on Big Red Bus like more frequently than you were coming on CHGO Bulls. We had to even it out because you're on with Fred recently. I liked that episode. That was good.
Yeah, I think I've been on there twice. This is my first time back on CHGO, if I'm not mistaken. 18 months ago almost.
No, you've been on.
I think we did an episode maybe last summer or something.
Yeah, I believe so. Wait, did you talk with Fred after the Lonzo for Okoro trade went down?
Yes, sadly.
How did that? I missed that. How did that conversation go?
As expected, as you could imagine.
Well, we'll get to your thoughts on that, but first, obviously, Bulls fans everywhere are still in this holding pattern, waiting to find out what happens in this standoff between Giddey, his representation, and the Bulls side of the negotiating table as a restricted free agent. Before we get to some of the latest, little mini quote-unquote updates or reports, curious just how you've perceived this whole long restricted free agent saga that Giddey has gone through from your seat, Mark.
Well, I mean, is there a new aggregation of something that's happened like 2 months ago that's now only just being reported as fact as something moved or changed?
Like Casey Johnson did one of his little fast break videos for CHSN, I think yesterday morning, and he just said the same thing that Jake Fisher had said a couple of weeks ago, which was there was a report of a multi-year deal on the table from the Bulls worth about $20 million average annual. And so Casey said the same thing that's been reported weeks past, and that's the latest.
Yeah, look, I mean, this is where I shout out to you and Goat and Big Dave for talking about this for what, like 50, 51, 52 days straight. Like there has been no change to the discourse for damn near 2 months now. So, yeah, I don't know. I think the Bulls are actually playing this thing right. I think anyone who's mad at the Bulls for not signing Giddey right now is probably wrong, very wrong. I think they're doing the right thing. It is annoying having to hear the same thing again and again about the Giddey situation, about, he wants 30, the Bulls want something closer to 20, that it's a negotiation. There's a bit of a stalemate in that regard, but this is maybe the one time where Arturas has done something right and by the book, and he's actually using the leverage that he has. So shout out for Arturas for finally realizing that he has that in his tool bag to use. But I think the Bulls are playing it well, playing it right. Let's see where it lands. I don't think they're going to get to that qualifying offer stage. I think they'll eventually get to a point where he probably signs 370, something like that. And once it does, then we can finally talk about the actual contract rather than fake contracts. That would be nice.
Shout out to the Man Lantern for the super chat, $2, saying, OMG, got to give some cash considerations for Mark K. We appreciate you, Man Lantern.
Mark K's favorite thing, cash considerations. How did you know, Man Lantern?
Mark, you mentioned the 3 for 70. I just wanted to know, like, what you think would be, I guess I'll phrase it this way. Like, what do you think will happen, and what would you feel good about, or what do you kind of want to happen from that perspective, both in the, like, considering it as something like in a vacuum, but also just like big picture, where you think the Bulls should go, like, within the parameters of what's realistic based on their goals and aspirations?
Yeah, look, parking my thoughts about Josh Giddey more broadly and not having him here, ideally. Parking that. I think I prefer a shorter term deal, just because I still don't believe in what he ultimately is. I know, a lot of people have discussed 4 or 5 year deals, whatever that might look like, but I don't know. The Patrick Williams contract has made me scared in a lot of senses. Not that I was ever the biggest Patrick guy, but I also didn't think when he signed that 5-year, $90 billion deal that it was the worst thing going around. I think we were all proven wrong about that, because it has been pretty damn bad. It's not onerous from a percentage of cap and all those things, but it's still like $18 million or whatever it is on the books that you don't necessarily want to have. So if for whatever reason Giddey doesn't take a leap, doesn't improve, and you've got him on the books for 4 or 5 years at a $25 million number, whatever it is, like, again, it's not onerous in the sense that it would be a max contract, but it's still money you wouldn't want to have. So I would want that out in terms of years, if for whatever reason it doesn't go well, whether he doesn't live up to expectations just due to not improving, or maybe as the Bulls collect more talent, he starts not fit with that said talent. So I would prefer 3 years, would be, I think, makes probably most sense for the team, but maybe also for Giddey as well in terms of getting back on the free agency market. There is risks associated with that, obviously. If he does break out and becomes awesome, and you get into a Kobe situation similar with Giddey, where it might be hard to re-sign him thereafter. But I think that's a risk I'd be more willing to take, rather than just giving him a fully guaranteed 4 or 5 year deal, and at real money. That probably sounds more risky to me.
What about dollars?
Well, I think that, like I said before, I think the Bulls are playing it right. Closer to 20 is probably the right outcome for the Bulls. They have all the leverage. They shouldn't be curtailing to any wants and needs from him and his management. And if he's a little bit grumpy or annoyed about it, like, so be it. He still has a lot to prove. He only really played, 25, 30 good games of basketball with the Bulls. I know we remember that last part of the season, but how would this narrative or this discourse be, playing out right now if the season was sort of flipped around, where his first 25, 30 games were the good ones, and then, the 50-odd bad ones were at the back end? Like, how would people be framing this entire conversation now? So I think he's fortunate that the lasting memory that fans and maybe the Bulls have of him is probably that last 30 games. But how real is that? We may discuss that a little bit later on. I don't know, but he still has a ton to prove, just more generally as a basketball player, but even as a Chicago Bull. So I don't think he can be asking for too much more than 2022, whatever it might be, more broadly. But given the free agency landscape and the restricted free agent market, like, he has no leverage. Sorry.
Yeah, I think the latest guess that was thrown out by one of the NBA people for Bleacher Report a couple days ago was 4 years, 96, and a player option. Saw that on my Twitter feed the other day. There you go. Katie's got that. You can take a look at. So, 4 years, 100, essentially would be that $25 million meet in the middle compromise of Josh wanting 30 and the Bulls being comfortable with 20. But, to that end, Mark, I'm curious what you think. Do you think it will still be as impressive as hey, AK actually did something right if they do meet in the middle and give him 4 years and 25 and a player option, just because the Bulls love giving people player options? Javon Carter still on this team. Is that still is that a good enough compromise in your opinion? Or is it if they have the upper hand, you just said if he's a little salty, oh well. A lot of Bulls fans are worried about Josh taking a contract he's not thrilled with and dipping out because of it in a year. But that's that's just only a qualifying offer situation.
Yeah, look, a 496 probably wouldn't be ideal in for me, at least. Again, that's a subjective comment, but I think, look, most young guys in this sort of situation are going to get a player option, generally speaking. The team options or non-guarantees or those sorts of situations are typically reserved for aging veterans or end of the bench type guys. So I wouldn't be too mad about the whole player option thing, because that's pretty stock standard, I guess. But where it would, I would rather a 2+1 rather than the 3+1. And if it is getting to the point where it is longer in terms of years, then I would want less in terms of guaranteed dollars. So that example, which was just posted on just now, the 496, that's probably a little too high for me, but I don't think it's that far removed from the ballpark where, I would be mad about it or anything like that.
Do you feel like there's a comment from Nick P. 496 with a player option is a loss at this point in the negotiation for the Bulls? Do you feel like it's a situation where, because they have so much leverage, they can actually not really negotiate and just kind of put Giddey in a position where he has to take the offer that's available to him? And if so, how much do you feel, or how much would you worry about that sort of frustrating him or harming the relationship? Because I feel like that's something that I've heard a lot in our comments of just you don't want to disrespect him, you don't want to alienate him, you don't want to get him to leave, which regardless of how you feel about that, there is something to be said for, or do you feel there's something to be said for damaging the relationship part?
Yeah, I think there's an element of that, but at the same time, maybe addressing your second point there around Giddey being annoyed at the situation, what better situation is there for him than Chicago? They are orienting their entire offense around him in many respects. Yes, Kobe's here, Martis is here, and we want to see him grow and develop, and let's see what he can do on offense. But ultimately, this is going to be a Josh Giddey offense. I don't know if there's another situation in the league that is going to grant him that sort of freedom or luxury in that regard. So maybe he'll be annoyed initially, but this is probably still the best platform for him to play his best basketball, but also to earn his next contract as well. So if he isn't annoyed, hopefully it's momentary. But coming back to Nick's question in the comments, if is 496 a loss at this point? I think it depends on the base or the expectation which you were going into this with. And I was fearful of them just giving Giddey rather a 5-year, $150 million deal or 130, 140, whatever the number would be. So the minute you start walking that back, I think it becomes more favorable to the Bulls than otherwise. 496, probably, more than I would like to give, but I don't think it's that far removed. I would like it to be closer to 480 or something like that, but we're talking about an extra $4 million annually. So I don't think it's that problematic. 150, that if handing that to him now, that would be annoying. But 496, 490, whatever the number is, I think that's still a decent outcome for the Bulls.
We got to knock out a couple ads right now. I know that's one of Mark K's things that he misses the most about being a CHGO Bulls podcaster. He's with us for the full hour, though. We'll all come back on the other side and keep talking about Josh Giddey and take a look at some interesting splits. As Mark was talking earlier about the whole two sides of Josh Giddey, the two versions that Bulls fans saw. We'll talk about it more after this. Hit the like button. and subscribe. Today's show brought to you by Monarch Money. Finances can be messy and confusing. Monarch Money acts like your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control so you can stop earning and start growing. Don't just manage your money, start building it and building wealth with 50% off your first year for our CHGO Bulls listeners. Track your spending, savings, and investments effortlessly so you can focus on what matters most, making your biggest life goals a reality. The finance tool people actually love is Monarch Money. So join over 1 million households who are using it already. Monarch was named Wall Street Journal's best budgeting app of 2025. That's this year. So get control of your overall finances with Monarch Money. Use promo code CHGO at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with promo code CHGO.
What do you want to do with all those savings, Matthew? You want to bet it using Circa Sports. Whatever the sport,
I do.
The app to bet is Circa Sports Illinois. Circa Sports, sports betting the way it should be. Circa Sports Illinois has high betting limits, low holds, and exceptional customer service.
Real people?
Real people,
Humans.
no chat bots.
Beating
Bet
hearts.
on all your favorite teams, every game, every season. Spreads, props, futures, live lines. Circa has it all. You can fund and bet like a pro from anywhere, anytime in the great state of Illinois. Download your new bookie today at circasports.com. Must be 21 or older. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
We are back rolling along CHGO Bulls on Wednesday afternoon. Peck, Goat, Katie on the controls, and our pal Mark K hanging out with us. Mark, do you miss reading ads at all?
No?
No?
Not at all.
Do you miss
I've
being
got a
able to be
confession to
called?
What's that?
I skip the ads, guys. I skip the ads.
You do?
You can't say that on the show.
Oh my God.
Unacceptable. Then
I'm
how do you
just-
learn about all the great products and services that we offer to our listeners?
Well, that's the thing. I don't. But I just look. I'm an honest person. Just wanted to be transparent with you guys. It's been a long time since I've seen you. Time is of an essence these days. I skip. Sorry. I'm sorry.
Circa Sports Illinois doesn't really apply to you out in Australia. I'll give you a pass on that one.
Do they have a Sunnyside cannabis dispensary out in Melbourne?
I wish.
So, all right, the next thing we were talking about, and it is still on the Josh Giddey topic at large. Goat, you found somebody on Twitter the other day by the name of Dean Oliver.
The godfather of basketball analytics.
The godfather of basketball analytics, sports analytics. He's also the author of Basketball on Paper. And he was taking a look at Josh Giddey's in-season split trend from this past season, but also his last season with the Thunder, and he noticed that there is a pretty glaring similarity between how Josh Giddey fared at the beginning of the season and then right around the trade deadline turned things around. Katie, do you have that graph that we could take a look at, courtesy of Dean Oliver?
Do you want the first one, both of them? What do you want to look at?
Let's do side by side, or the first one and then the second one, whatever. Okay, so this is his last season with the Thunder,
This is
right?
2024.
Okay, so this is his 23-24 season with the Thunder. Obviously, you can see x-axis, net whatever on running net points. Started going down, worked his way back up a little bit, and right there, that vertical blue bar is the trade deadline of his final season with the Thunder. And then you see a huge jump in his performance via running net points being the stat to finish the season. And it was still only just a little bit above net zero, not quite positive 10.0. But so you see that overall trend. And then, Katie, if you flip it to Giddey's first season with the Bulls, it looks very similar. Obviously, the post-trade deadline jump up goes well beyond the plus 10 where he finished his final season with OKC, all the way up around plus 40. But it was similar in that the first part of his season was down in the dumps, and then right around the trade deadline, he picked his game up. Mark, I'm curious what you make of this sort of mini trend of Giddey having a poor start and a strong finish in his last season in OKC, and then the same thing happening again with the Bulls.
Yeah, well, look, I can't speak too much about the OKC stuff because I'm not going to pretend like I watched all of the Thunder games back then when Giddey was was still there, and certainly the last 20, 30 games of their season, 2 seasons ago. But for the Bulls, like I think there's some real things that changed for him that would have allowed him to be more himself. Let's say, obviously the trading of Zach LaVine, re-augmenting the offense around him becoming more of a focal point. Obviously, that in itself was beneficial for his opportunity, but also the fact that he was on ball more. He obviously played significantly better post-trade deadline. His ability to draw free throws was kind of wild and unexpected. I don't know if it'll maintain that, and the fact that he just couldn't miss a three. So those sorts of things are the things that I'm worried about and scared about, I suppose. Like, can he maintain that free throw rate? Can he maintain the 3-point rate? His volume went up, but also his makes went up. So I don't know. Like, they're the things that I question, the latter point. But obviously as well, he just got more opportunity, more time on ball. It began to feel more like a Josh Giddey team. Again, we can talk about like where does that Josh Giddey team ultimately lead you to, but there are very real reasons as to why his numbers would tick up for the Bulls post-trade deadline. But I guess the part where I still question everything is just the efficiency and those sorts of gains. Typically, that doesn't correlate with more volume, more opportunity, those sorts of things. But for whatever reason, it did for Giddey. So let's see if that maintains. But I'm not necessarily too surprised by those stats, at least during his tenure in Chicago. Like I said, I can't really speak to the Thunder stuff because there may be a whole bunch of different reasons for that, but I think it's pretty clear what happened in Chicago.
I mean, you look at where that Thunder team was, and I agree, I wasn't watching all their games, but like that was a team that was taking things very seriously. They made it the second round of the playoffs. They were like the breakout team of the league that year in 2024. So it's not like the games didn't matter. He was just like racking up stats on, a meaningless team. It's also not like he was, I don't know exactly, I can't remember exactly what the numbers were, but like it was, net 40 with the Bulls and like net 10 or something with the Thunder. Yeah. So not quite the same impact, but it kind of made me feel that I had fallen victim a little bit to the recency bias of what you were just talking about, like him playing so well at the end of the year, as opposed to what would have happened if he did that during the first 25 games and then finished the way he did in his first 50 games. And I think like we've talked about this a little bit in terms of what would be a palatable deal for me with Giddey and like what his role could be. And I feel like this kind of refreshed my mind a little bit about like how the Bulls should be playing it a little bit more conservatively. I felt like I had been saying it's like fine if you give him upwards of $25 million. I think that's like an unnecessary number to give him at this point, given the market dynamics, but like you probably could be okay with that. And to your point about Patrick Williams, Mark, like I do feel that they probably like a good deal would be, I guess what I'm trying to say is a good deal would be a number that if he turns out to be the version of himself that he was playing for those first 50 games, which I'm not saying he will be, or that's who he is. And the back half was a fluke. I think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, but can you get him on a number where if it turns out that he needs to be your sixth man, whether that's because you win the lottery and you get Darren Peterson and he's the truth, or because he turns out to continue to struggle in important moments and you have to reduce his role. Can you get him on a number where if he's your sixth man, you can still survive with that? And not only maybe survive, but turn him into another asset to another team that might want to take another chance on him, or because he's still providing excess value. I don't know exactly what that number would be. It's probably not even $20 million, so I don't think that's necessarily realistic. But that's where you start to feel really good about it in terms of it being a value contract. Obviously for Giddey, he's going to say, look, I played this well. We played this well as a team. We're onto something. We believe in what we're building. It's built around me. To your point, Mark, like this is the best situation for me in the league. And like, why wouldn't you try to invest in me to continue building that way? So I get why he wants more, but I think if you're thinking about it in terms of the best possible value, this graphic kind of reminded me that there is actually some chance that he goes, not that he's going to like go back to being whatever version of basketball player he was before the break, but that maybe being like a plus starter is not necessarily, there's not as much of a chance of that as I had been in thinking about just based on the way that he finished the year.
Yeah, 100%. And
go ahead,
sorry,
Mark.
man, I was just going to say, like, there's more for him to prove. Like that 3-point rate and that 3% percentage. I know what was it, like 38% to finish the year, but a lot of that was on dead open shots. He still has a lot to prove as a shooter.
46%.
Probably the biggest thing. 36. The biggest thing for me is like just the free throw rate. Like that's the part that really changed in his game and his ability to get downhill and not just toss up those random floaters, but it was actually making shots around the basket and when he wasn't getting fouled, getting to the line 5-6 times a game, which again felt very abnormal from where he had been previously, whereas 1 or 2 free throws a game. Like those things are real. They're the things that he needs to prove, I think, for himself, but also for the Bulls. Like again, if they're still trying to position this thing around him, like they need to know exactly what they're investing in. And it just so happens to be that they had to make that call on him now. And this, again, not to relitigate the Giddey trade, but like this was one of the risks that you were essentially trading for a guy in the last year on his deal, and you needed to have this season be an audition season. And in some respects, it worked out well. In others, it didn't. So I think where they're ultimately going to land is the right position. But yeah, I don't know. If Giddey's annoyed about it, he shouldn't be, because he still has a lot to prove. And he's fortunate to be in Chicago, who are given this opportunity to prove that. So I don't see it as a negative, but perhaps he does.
Mark, the whole like which version of Giddey shows up thing is, Bulls fans can talk circles around that. But I think it's more easily understood, at least from my vantage point, why you saw that trend for Giddey in Chicago as opposed to his last season in OKC. Because like the running net points in OKC for him going up towards the end of a season where OKC was finding out that he didn't fit perfectly into their system and his role kind of diminished as SGA and Jalen Williams like ascended. That to me is more perplexing than the pretty simple reasoning of at the trade deadline all of a sudden Josh Giddey starts having more running net points. Or, in other words, like, hey, a higher game score, a better box score, whatever way you want to frame it, because Josh Giddey took advantage of the vacated usage of Zach LaVine, who was traded right before that happened. Right before Josh Giddey picks it up, he takes over a huge vacancy in the Bulls offense that a all-star caliber level of play from Zach LaVine once held. That to me makes sense. It's just a matter of which version you see as the more likely one to show up for the majority of the upcoming season, when Josh Giddey is going to be playing on some kind of new contract, whether it be a qualifying offer prove-it deal or a multi-year deal. I think the 50-so games versus 20-something games, the 2/3 here, 1/3 there, is worrisome to a lot of us. And I'm not saying, Josh Giddey can't be that good or efficient of a player as the version we saw after the trade deadline this past season. But as you have said, like, I think some Bulls fans want to see it, if he can prove that for a whole season, and in a season in which that level of play from Josh is a big reason why the Bulls win games.
Yeah. And look, like I said before, I can't speak to why his numbers increased for that last period in OKC. But what we also do know about his, final moments in OKC, his tenure there, is to what Johnny Pigeon in the comments is sort of speaking to, that we've seen Giddey struggle at times next to better players, whether that's SGA, Jalen Williams, whoever it may be. And I think most Bulls fans, even those of whom are big Josh Giddey fans, like, you would hope that at some point Josh Giddey is the 3rd, 4th, 5th best player on this team, because that means you've acquired real talent, real star level guys, and that if Giddey is your 3rd, 4th, 5th best guy, whatever it might be, then that's probably a positive trend for the Bulls. But like, what does that mean for Josh Giddey? So we've seen him struggle when he's had to go more off ball or be less, or have the offense less be about him, let's say, and his strengths. The Bulls are currently sort of catering more to him than maybe what the Thunder did in his final season there for obvious reasons. But that's part of the reasoning, for me at least, as to why I'd still be concerned about what number I'm giving this guy, or more importantly, like I said before, with the amount of years. I'm more concerned with years of the deal than the actual annual average value, because I'm still not convinced that this is the guy the offense should be, like I said, geared around. So if that's the case, what does this look like from a year's point of view? So I don't know. He still has a lot to prove, like I said before. There's still a lot for him to show. Who is the real Josh Giddey? I think He needs to prove that. In some respects, maybe he showed that last season. And I've heard you guys speak to this, that for these level of players, whether it's Giddey, whether it's Kobe White, whomever it may be on this team, where you got a lot of good players but maybe not great players, you should expect some level of inconsistency. That's typically what separates the good players with the great players, right? So maybe Giddey is just going to be this kind of guy who nets out as a top 80 player, let's call it, but we'll have a month where he's awesome, have a month where he's not so great, and then maybe 2 or 3 months where he's okay. And maybe that's where you net out more broadly. I think that's probably the most realistic or likely scenario. But I don't know. We'll find out in time, but it's going to be an interesting season from that point of view.
If that doesn't scream Chicago Bulls basketball, I don't know what does. We got to knock out a couple more ads right here. We'll come back on the other side and keep talking with our guy, Mark K. Got to get his thoughts on some of the other offseason moves and some interesting stuff that Steve Kerr said about youth player development, which obviously is of the utmost importance for Bulls fans right now. Hit the like if you didn't do it during the first ad break. Ads. New sponsor alert! Today's show brought to you by Ownwell. Overpaying for property taxes is something far too many Cook County residents are doing. You don't have to be one of them. In Cook County, appeal windows vary by township, close up rapidly, and are very difficult to win. Let Ownwell's experts ensure you're prepared for when it counts. You can sign up in under 3 minutes, and their team of local experts and cutting-edge technology can start saving you money with no upfront costs. Put property tax money back in your pocket in just minutes. No stress or big-time investment. 86% of Ownwell's customers receive a reduction. Ownwell handles everything from start to finish and delivers top results with an average savings of $1,102. Those are dollars I could use. I'm sure you could too. No upfront costs, savings, or free guarantee. Only pay if you save. Save money on your Cook County property taxes with Ownwell. Sign up in less than 3 minutes and start your appeal today at ownwell.com/cook. That's OWNWELL.com/COOK. Ownwell. Start cooking.
Start cooking. Giddey. What time is it?
Game time, hoot.
Game time makes getting tickets faster and easier than ever. You can save up to 60% buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. And they've got our favorite zone deals where you can save even more when you let Game Time choose the seats, but you can still choose the section. They've got the fees up front. There will be no surprises at checkout, and you can get a panoramic view from your seat in-app before you buy. And best of all, they have the lowest price guarantee, where Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, use code CHGO for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use code CHGO for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
What? Wow. And we're back. CHGO Bulls hanging out all Wednesday. All right, so before we moved on to the youth development chat, you wanted to have a thought or two more about the whole Josh Giddey season split thing, right?
Exactly, yeah, because I think just looking at some of the numbers of how stark the contrast is does add to how just give you some perspective on like how real that jump was. So, Katie, if you're able to pull that up, very interesting website called Data Baller with an R at the end, not an ER.
He's a baller.
But you can look at like Giddey's first 50 games compared to his final 20 and just see like how drastic of an improvement he had. And so you go from 12.1 points in his first 50 games to 20.9, 6.5 assists to 9 assists, 7.2 rebounds to 10.3 rebounds, all the while only increasing his turnovers by 0.7 per game. He went from 53.8 true shooting, which is about 5 points below league average, to 62.4, which is about 5 points above league average. He shot 47% on threes compared to 33.7% on threes in the first half. And then if you scroll all the way to the bottom, it's he was for a plus minus, a minus 3.5 for the first 50 games on average, and a plus 5.4 during
nuts.
The final 20
that
games.
Is a crazy swing.
Even if like you believe that Josh Giddey is like more of the version of what he showed in the second half or the second part of the season, the last 20 games, you also should be willing to concede the fact that he's not a 47% 3-point shooter, right? Like nobody is. Steph is not a 47%. 3-point shooter.
No.
And like that would drop his averages down quite a bit, and it would change, I think, how teams defend him. But like, to me, those are like, you're going to have hot and cold stretches during the course of the season. I'm not as concerned about that. For me, and I think this is the point that Mark was trying to get to at the end, is like, there needs to be more consistency with it. So even if you believe that Giddey is closer to the second part of the season than the first, he needs to do that over the course of a full season, over multiple full seasons, for it to really like sink in. And I think regardless of what the Bulls pay him, they really are building around his skill set. And so like ultimately, whether you buy him or not, believe in him or not, think what he did during the first 50 games is the real Giddey and not the final 20 or vice versa. The best thing for the Bulls is for him to look like that, because that's their guy. And so I think the key with the contract is just making sure that you get him on a number where if he turns out to be the guy who you saw during the first 50 games, at least he's still tradable. And like, you may not want to trade him. I do think that he can and will improve. And I don't want to like think about this as like bashing him, because like he did have a really strong end of the year. And I agree with the point you made, Mark, about the free throw drawing. Like that was a huge deal for me. The 3-point shooting, obviously a big deal as well. But it's just got to be more consistent. I think the unfortunate thing is that you have to make a long-term decision based on a very small sample size here. And when the N is 20 games, like it's hard to do that.
Yeah, Mark, I mean, like, I think only a handful of the most aggressive Giddey optimists, the leaders, the board of directors of the Giddey committee, think that sample size of post-All-Star break games last year is just what he's going to average for a full season coming into this year, like 21, 10, and 9. I think it's unreasonable to expect that. But I'm curious, like somebody in the chat asked earlier, will the real Josh Giddey please stand up? You know, shout out Slim Shady. Which one do you think he will be closer to mirroring in the first 15, 20 or so game sample size out of the gate this year? The first 2/3 Giddey or the final third Giddey?
Well, there's another name for those big Giddey fans as well, but I won't refer to that. Just for the record. But
I don't use that term anymore, Mark. I think it's a little too mean. We're not trying to hurt anybody's feelings around here.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Look, I think if anyone's thinking we're having a disparaging conversation about Josh Giddey, I think that's absolutely not true. I think we're just speaking facts. We're being considerate of a number of different factors. So I don't think we're being haters or overly harsh here. I do think this is just the reality of the situation. To your question, like which is more likely, I would say the first 50 games is more likely, because the first 50 games is probably more in line with what we've seen more from Giddey more broadly across his career. I don't think he's going to be that poor, let's say, but what we saw on those last 20 games, as you sort of had on the screen there on those numbers, there was some obvious red flags or points on that data sheet where it's like, this is just not sustainable very clearly. Like going from 2 free throws to 6 free throws in the matter of like almost snapping your fingers and basically you're a different guy. Like that feels... It should at least mean you should be asking questions. Same thing with the 3-point percentage. We can all see that and can speak to that, and that's very clear. But anytime we're talking about small samples, like we just need to have some level of caution. But I would say that he's probably more closer to the first 50 games than the last 20 games, because those last 20 games were damn near all-star level performance, and there's no reason to think that that's going to be the case just yet. Maybe as we collect more data, we learn more, and maybe our opinions can change then. But I kind of think threading the needle between the two is probably the most likely outcome, where he's like a 14, 8, and 8 type of guy. His efficiency comes back down in terms of the 3-point line. Maybe he doesn't get to the free throw line at that same rate that he was those last 20 games. And when that happens, maybe he nets out as a 14, 8, and 8 guy, like I said. But I think what I'm interested in as well is, putting aside like how real that March madness performance was from the Bulls and into April, like how do the teams around the league start treating the Bulls? Do they take that last 20-odd games seriously and start defending them in a different way? Do the Bulls themselves try to bring back that play style? Can they do that play style again for this season, the upcoming seasons to come? Because it is a pretty taxing and hard way to play basketball, getting up and down the court that hard, that often on both sides of the ball, like Billy wants to do. So, like, can they repeat that, I guess, themselves? But even if they try to repeat that, are the league more wise to that now? And do they start guarding them differently? If so, like, how do the Bulls react to that? How does Josh Giddey react to a team now, or teams now maybe guarding him a little bit differently if they are going to assume that he is this league guy? So, I don't know. It's going to be an interesting situation. I think Will said it before, like the truth is somewhere in the middle. Like Giddey was so bad to start last season to the point where he was getting benched at the end of games. And people conveniently forget that for a number of different reasons. Credit to him as well. His defense did improve at the back end of last season, but he's not as good as what I think he showed towards the close of the season. I don't think he's as bad as what he started his tenure as Chicago in. He's probably somewhere in the middle, and that's probably where it's going to net out, and he'll be okay and fine. And he'll be just a good player. And this whole talk about this contract lasting for 50 odd days, it'll be something that we laugh about in several years' time. But he'll be fine. He'll be fine, but is fine enough? Probably not.
In addition to Giddey being the best version of himself, ideally, for AK's plan to start to hopefully work, shout out 9 to 10. Some of the other young guys on this roster that AK has flipped over the past year with all these various trades of his veterans, some of these other young guys need to turn into some of those theoretical 9 to 10 good to very good players for AK's plan to work. And I know you've got lots of thoughts on Bulls youth development, Mark, and have over the years, and I think maybe some part of Bulls Nation who held certain opinions owe you an apology for a certain young Bulls player. But to start this conversation, we wanted to play something that Bulls legend himself, Steve Kerr, was saying on the Glue Guys podcast just a couple days ago. Shane Battier, NBA legend himself, his podcast, Steve Kerr was talking about how youth development in the NBA has changed since their playing days. Katie, you want to play that?
I just think it's really important to collaborate with your staff and to encourage the young coaches to really bring a lot of ideas to the table. I really lean on my younger coaches. One of the ways the league is so different now is that we're now a developmental league. You know, when you came into the league, when I was in the league, we were already developed. You played for Coach K for 4 years. I played for Lute Olson for 4 years. We were ready, and the other part that was different was the schedule was different. So we'd have like 3 games in 4 nights. Then you'd have 4 days off. So you'd have 2 great practices. Now the schedule is basically you play every other day all year long. We don't practice anymore. So we have to develop these 19-year-old kids who are coming into the league without much practice time. That has meant an entirely revamped kind of development program. And frankly, I'm not great with it. Like I'm an older coach. I'm a disciple of Phil and Pop, and so I lean on the young guys to really install great development drills, decision making stuff, things that I never did or knew how to teach. But the key is to figure that out and let the people who can do those things, let them do it and empower them. And I think that's how you progress.
Mark, curious what you make of those comments from Steve. I think he has a point, but just sort of like the double-edged sword of the kids are so young, and because of the way that the league is scheduled, practice days don't really exist when you're in season, and it's hard to kind of shape these players who are one and done, either still playing for double NCAA or maybe they're playing pro overseas, as the Bulls' 12th overall pick Noah Esenge did this past year, or maybe playing in the G League. Do you see that as an issue, not just for the league, but for the Bulls specifically?
Maybe less so the Bulls, just because like how many real young guys do they have on the roster right now? It's like Mattis and Noah. So like, I mean, they got young guys. Josh Giddey is still a young guy, but he's pretty experienced at this point. So I think the ways the Bulls are approaching it is maybe a little bit different to maybe other teams like the Wizards, for example, who are truly bottoming out and just collecting a whole bunch of young guys and throwing them out there and seeing what sticks. And maybe the Wizards aren't even a great example because they started to bring in veterans as well. But yeah, Kerr makes some good points. It is probably tougher to develop some of these young guys now compared to later or earlier in NBA life from when he was going around and those sorts of things. Players are coming in a little bit more raw. And we saw that with Mattis, I think, last season. If we want to do the whole comparing the early part of the season to the latter part, Mattis is a good example of what time and growth and development looks like. And I think the Bulls more broadly are managing him pretty damn perfectly, if I can say that. But I think for the Bulls as well, because they've only maybe engineering their thing around a few young guys and surrounding them with veterans, that maybe what Kerr spoke to isn't as relevant to maybe the Bulls as it is some other scenarios. And another one that pops to mind is Brooklyn. Like, that's going to be a very interesting test case of what Steve Kerr was sort of talking to. But I think the Bulls are sort of playing this a little bit differently and maybe not approaching it with the same tact as maybe some of these other teams.
I mean, I don't know what the context is around that conversation, and like if he's specifically pointing to any players. It feels like a Kuminga thing, like, and that would probably make sense given that whole situation. But yeah, I mean, you understand from his perspective more so than really the Bulls, because like the Bulls don't have, all-time legends on their team, of like how it's difficult to trust a guy like Kuminga in key situations in the playoffs when you're actually trying to compete for something, and when you have guys that have conflicting skill sets and don't necessarily fit well together. And if he's not really leaning into a role where he, shoots and defends and uses his athleticism and instead wants to like pound the ball, you could see how that would be problematic. Whereas for the Bulls, I think it's built a little bit differently. Their system, although they like are playing fast and shooting a lot of threes, it's not very much at all like the Warriors system, which is a lot more like motion and movement and away from the ball passing. Like the Bulls are just trying to get up and down and put pressure on the rim. So it's easier, I think, to identify and carve out a niche for yourself on the Bulls roster if you're a young player, relatively speaking, to the Warriors. But it kind of leads me into a question about Noah Asenge, Mark, and what you thought about him as a draft pick, where he kind of, I don't know how much Summer League you watched, if any, but like where he kind of factors into the rotation early in your mind, and how far away he is from being somebody who can contribute, whether it's in a smaller role or potentially down the line, like developing more into somebody that can create.
Yeah, look, I think he's a long way away. He's a long way away. I thought it was a decent, solid draft pick. I don't really have any faults around that. I think where they were drafting, I thought it was a reasonable draft pick, but he is raw. Like I spoke about Martis being raw, but Esenge is way rawer than Martis ever was. But the biggest concern I have with Esenge is probably less to do with him, but more the fact that I kind of feel like he and Martis are going to probably net out at playing the same position, and in terms of being, that swing forward, more 4 than 3, and like how will they fit together? Like, so assuming Esenge can develop accordingly and be the player that we think he can, like how does he actually fit with Martis on the court? Because I don't think either could play the 5. Can one of them play a 3 and one of them play 4? Like that's probably where my mind went after seeing the Asenge draft pick, but also seeing him at Summer League as well. Like both these guys feel like 4s to me. So can they overlap, or will they have, or can't they? Like that's going to be a scenario that is going to be interesting. And if Martis really takes off and becomes the player that a lot of Bulls fans hope he can, like that's 36 minutes a night at power forward that are locked up. Where does Asenge sort of fit into that from that perspective? It would help if Martis can sort of swing down to the 3, or Asenge maybe bulks up a bit and plays more 5. Maybe there's more opportunity from that point of view. But that's kind of where my mind went in terms of the Asenge pick, particularly after seeing him at Summer League. I think it's an interesting pick, an intriguing pick, but I hope Bulls fans aren't expecting anything of him for this upcoming season. Even Martis as well. Like I hope people are tempering their expectations. Year 2 is always difficult. And for the Bulls more broadly, like I said before, let's see how teams start guarding them, because that might make things difficult for Martis, but certainly for Asenge as well. So I'm hoping the expectations are a little bit, tepid, let's say, and people are calmed down a little bit and aren't screaming at Billy Donovan for not playing Asenge 25 minutes a night come, in October or November, because even if there was opportunity, I don't think he's ready as such. His body doesn't scream a player that is ready, and even Martis to a degree, like he still needs to grow into that thing. So hopefully Bulls fans are going to be reasonable about it, but I dare say that's not the case. But let's see.
Our guy Johnny Pigeon in the chat just said the Noah pick shows AK isn't serious about winning right now. Otherwise, you don't take a guy who's 2 years away from being 2 years away with the 12th overall pick. I think most Bulls fans are tempering their expectations for Noah this year and expecting a lot of Windy City Bulls minutes. I would be shocked if he sees his role increase to the level that Modest's did down the stretch of Modest's rookie year. I just don't think he's there yet. But whether you're talking about Modest, Noah Asenge, the youngest and rawest of the bunch, Dalen Terry is still here. Julian Phillips is still here. They've shown flashes, but neither of them earned a spot solidly in Billy's rotation at any point in their young NBA careers. And then there's Pat. What do you make of the situation that AK has built for himself, Mark, where it's like, hey, we're getting younger, and we got all these toolsy wings. None of them are very good at basketball, but we got to look at all these toolsy wings we got. Where do you see him fighting his way out of that, and which of these players, if any, are going to be along for the ride?
Yeah, I mean, Pat's an interesting one. Pat's an interesting one.
By the way, sorry to cut you off, but everyone in Bulls Nation and on Bulls Twitter who was coming at Mark over the years, he called it way before the rest of us that Patrick Williams was a dud. Patrick Williams is who he is. And Mark, you took so much flack for that on Twitter, on Bulls Twitter. Everyone should publicly apologize. Okay, go.
Yeah, look, that's true. I was definitely right about Patrick Williams, but there's probably some examples where I was very wrong about as well. But we won't bring those up, will we? But look, no, I think he's in an interesting situation. There's no way he's going to start the season at power forward. I would assume Manas would have that locked up. I would hope at least. Maybe small forward, but even then, it kind of feels like that's a Okoro spot to lose, sadly as well. But he's not a young guy anymore. This is year 6 for Pat. He'll be coming off the bench. It's year 2 of his new deal. Well, it's not so new deal now at this point. I don't even consider him a young guy anymore. Even someone like Dalen Terry, yeah, technically still young relative to me, young 20-year-old, but 4th year coming into the league. Very little opportunity for him and probably Julian Phillips. So I don't actually think the Bulls are that young, I guess is what I'm getting at. Giddey still young, 22 going on to 23. Obviously Matas, 20. Asenge 18 going, into 19. But beyond those guys, there's not a lot of young players on this team. I don't consider Kobe a young guy anymore. Io neither. They're 25 going on 26. It's a whole bunch of other veterans. Obviously Vooch, Kevin Huerter, a whole bunch of guys. So I don't know if this team is really that young. They've gone younger than what they were, but they were a pretty, heavily veteran-laden team. So I don't know how young this team is. I don't know what that means for Patrick Williams more broadly. Typically, as you get into year 6, year 7, and those sorts of things, you kind of are who you are. And for Pat, he's always kind of been who he was the minute he stepped into the league. He's an interesting test case in that regard. It's a bit abnormal. But I don't know what to make of him at this point. I just didn't see a scenario where he was as bad as what he was last season. I was never a Patrick Williams guy. As I said before, I thought the contract that they gave him in free agency was fine, assuming he continued being what he was, a pretty consistent 10 and 5 guy with a decent shooter. But he wasn't even that last season. He was significantly worse. So what is he going to be? Who the hell knows is my response. Let's see. But can he be an adequate backup power forward? I think that at least should be the expectation going into it. And let's see if he gives us anything more.
Yeah, it's interesting too because you mentioned obviously Patrick and how that factors into the power forward or small forward rotation. Kevin Huerter played a ton of minutes last year, had a huge role after coming over, and that was when Lonzo and Aya were out. We know Billy Donovan likes to go with 3 guards, so you've got more bodies that are going to have to shift up the rotation to get minutes because you've got Aya, you still have got assuming Giddey comes back, you've got Kobe, you've got Trey Jones is back, and you've got Isaac Okoro. So I wanted to get your thoughts on the Okoro for Lonzo trade, what you thought about that. And yeah, if you have any slights that you can throw towards C-Red Fred, feel free.
Is Isaac Okoro the Bulls starting 3 this season, Mark? Because some people, and Goat's been talking about it, hey, Huerter played a lot of minutes, kind of caught fire down the stretch. Who's in the starting lineup, Huerter or Okoro? AK's traded a 1-for-1 again to get Okoro.
Yeah. I mean, I've got nothing to say about C-Red Fred. Nothing positive.
Miss it,
anyway.
Mark. Don't you miss talking about it every day?
Fred is Fred. And you can read into that as you will. But yeah, I mean, small forward is the one open spot right now. It feels like, Giddey and Kobe's the backcourt, Mattis and Vooch are playing at 4 and 5. You would think. So it's really just small forward that's up for grabs. I think there's cases for Herder, just due to his movement shooting and those sorts of things, and the fact that I think that is probably maybe another reason why Giddey played the way he did towards the back end. Like, we shouldn't maybe overlook the construction of the team then, and the fact that maybe he had more lanes to get to the basket because he was playing next to a guy who was viewed as a movement shooter type, a little bit different to Zach. Like, we know Zach can do those things, but Zach was a more on ball, I guess. But like, I think Herder has a real chance to get that small forward position. Does bring some positive things, but given that the fact that they traded for Okoro, they very clearly need some perimeter defense if you're going to start Kobe and Giddey. I would assume Okoro is probably most in line to get that slot. I'm not an Okoro fan at all. I think he's closer to Patrick Williams than being some sort of unfound star that's going to make it good on his second team or anything like that. Let's see what he brings, but I would not be surprised at all if Okoro maybe gets the start and is in some respects playing a Keith Bogans type role, and at some point we see Billy just going with what he knows, which is, Giddey, Kobe, Io playing a lot of small forward, Mattis and Vooch. Like, I think that'll be his closing five for most nights. Maybe Herder gets in for shooting at points in time, but I would be surprised if Okoro is lent on more than Io. I think people are forgetting about Io a little bit. He had a mixed season last season for a number of different reasons. But yeah, I think Io is going to end up being the small forward of this team, whether a starter or not. And I think that's who's going to be closing games a lot at 3 for the Bulls. Probably not even Herder or Okoro. It'll be Io.
We're almost out of time here, Mark. I am curious, just sort of like zooming out a bit, to look at where the Bulls are, the talent they have on their roster, expectations on Kobe, Giddey, Shoulders, Mott is taking a step forward, and the rest of the Eastern Conference, which people are calling wide open. You're probably going to have Cleveland and the Knicks somewhere 1-2 towards the top. What's going to happen with Boston, Indy? Tons of questions with Philly, per usual. Is Milwaukee going to be any good? People say, hey, the East is wide open. Maybe this Bulls team takes a step forward sooner than some think and can get in the mix and maybe even fight their way to a 6th seed. Do you see that, in any realistic way? Or are you, like me, going ahead and booking your viewing ticket to the 9-10 Bulls Heat play-in tournament game?
Well, look, part of the reason why I agreed to come on this show was I needed to bring William back to the darkness, because I've just noticed he's becoming a little bit more sea-red than I would have liked, and I found myself aligning more to Matthews' takes than Williams, which is a shock to the system. I wasn't expecting that, but where I will concede some ground is I think the Bulls have scope to maybe get into that 7-8 range because of what's happening in Boston, Indiana, Milwaukee, Philadelphia, as you talked about. Like, those teams are so in flux that we have no idea what to think of them. And we know what the Bulls are going to be. They're not going to be a team that bottoms out. They're going to play for all 82. They're trying to get to the postseason, whereas maybe some of these other teams may start the season with same goals, but may hit the exit button a little bit sooner. Like the Raptors as an example. If things just don't click for them, maybe they pivot. They're more likely to pivot than the Bulls would be. So, or insert any other team in that regard. So maybe the Bulls could do that this season in the sense of getting to the 7th or 8th seed, maybe getting to the playoffs this year. Like, that's probably best case scenario. But like, what does that ultimately mean when Indiana and Boston and maybe some of these other teams start loading up again? Like, do they still net out as that 7th or 8th best team in the East? And even if that, being the 7th or 8th best team in the East is nothing to write home about. Let's be very clear about that. So
Mark,
I think there is scope.
Depends who you ask.
Wow, yeah, I guess depends. Look, I'm not one of those fans that AK was referencing in Darnell's piece a year or so ago, but look, I think there is scope for the Bulls to have a good positive season this year. Maybe they hit 40 wins instead of 39. But like, is that lasting? Will that be a continuous upward trend? I don't know. I doubt it. You would need Mattis to take an absolute leap. You would need Giddey to take that leap. But coming back to my point, like, I think there is probably a little bit more scope for this season for the Bulls to do something a little bit more momentous and get to 7 and 8 rather than 9 and 10. But I don't know I don't know how sustainable that is once these other teams start, getting back together. Jason Tatum comes back, Tyrese Halliburton comes back. A lot of these other teams are probably more focused and more keen on improving their team at a faster rate than the Bulls. So let's see, but I'm not expecting it to be sustainable if assuming it even lands at all.
I guess thinking the Bulls have a chance to go 40-42 is seeing red.
That's what it is these days. It's a low bar. It's a low bar. Our guy Paul in the chat said we need a Mark K, C Red Fred live debate. This is why we lure Mark out of retirement every once in a while. I don't know if we can handle Mark and Fred on our show simultaneously. The world might explode, but I always enjoy listening to Mark and Fred go back.
It's like MJ coming out of retirement to beat people up in one-on-one every now and again.
Exactly. Well, hey, the world needs its Isaac Okoro believers. So shout out to our pal, C Red Fred, one of the best. Mark, thank you so much for joining us, man. We truly appreciate it. We miss you terribly every day. I miss your sane voice around here on a consistent basis. But enjoy the peace and quiet that is not being on Bulls Twitter every waking minute of every day.
Yeah,
I'd tell Bulls fans to follow you, but I don't even know if you want them to. I'd enjoy your peace, protect your peace.
No, my Twitter account doesn't exist anymore. It's been deleted, so they can't. But yeah, it's nice being disconnected from social media. This has been nice connecting with you guys again. Like I said before, I still listen every day. So in some respects, I still feel connected to you all. But I miss doing this with you guys. I'm sad that Big Dave couldn't join us today, but hopefully he's well, and maybe we can do that another time, and I get to see him from that standpoint. But you guys are doing great stuff. I love listening to you, and I miss you all.
Much love and appreciation to our
friend.
guy. Mark, we love you, buddy. That's going to do it for today. We'll be back tomorrow. Live episode, 4 p.m. Central Standard Time per usual. For Mark K, the one and only. Katie, the queen of the controls. Will the go Gottlieb, Will_Gottlieb. Bam! Read his stuff. AllCHGO.com. Become a diehard so you can read it. Check out the Kevin Herter exclusive interview available now on that website. I'm Bulls_Peck. We are CHGO_Bulls. Have a lovely Wednesday night. Bulls Nation. Shout out to our guy, Mark K. See Red be good.
We all silly like the mayor.